If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. I'm your host, the Innkeeper, and this is our live call and talk show all about the Wheel of Time. And no, it's not my setup here with the lights. My face is a little darker than it normally is because I just spent like a week in Maui for the first time, and it was so incredible. Like, I'm almost 50, and I've been a couple places, but I've never been out to the Hawaiian Islands, and I swam next to a turtle. I was near it. I didn't touch it, but I was near it. And that was like somehow the most amazing life-changing experience. Like, all I want to do is like swim around turtles now for the rest of my life. So someday we'll go back. But today that was freaking amazing. Awesome. And I got home at like 8 a.m. this morning and worked today. So that is not to say that I am not up and jazzed and ready to talk about some like amazing stuff. It is to say though, I'll probably crash tonight and I didn't have enough time to put together cool quote screens that I'll put up on the screen. So lots of reading at the screen. You'll just be staring at me and that's right, count up 4 wonderful guests tonight. So without further ado, let me welcome to the Dusty Wheel the delvers of the Chronicles or time or, you know, delving. You know what? It's not my fault, by the way, you 4, that I'm not totally sure because look, it's like delving the Chronicles and delvers of time. So is it like both? Is it one? Like, how does this work?
Listen,
Ask the fact checker.
listen, it's okay. So you have to understand that we're delving the Chronicles. That's what we're doing on the podcast. That's the actual action of what we're doing. Unfortunately, there's a format to everything both on Twitter time, on Watch Skies. You are something of time.
Okay.
And sometimes you just got to follow the format. So yeah, we are the delvers of time, delving the Chronicles.
Okay. That's fair. I'm seeing lots of, That makes sense. So, because it was so funny, I think I'd introduced you guys as Delvers of Time, and then I went back and I was like, oh, I should have said Delving the Chronicles. But now it sounds like I was right. Basically, if I just say the Delvers,
We're the Delvers.
the Delvers.
Yeah, with the Delvers.
We delve.
We delve.
The Chronicle Delvers.
And
know
it's a capital D. It's a talent. We're delving.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, you have to understand. I think what did we do? We went through like a month of like, what should we name ourselves? And we have just an entire list of.
Yes. No, I like it. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun. And why don't you? I know there are a lot of people watching right now that may know who you all are, but why don't you do a round of introductions? And Zaina Lou, why don't you kick us off?
Hello, I am Zool or Dana Lou, depending on where you know me from. And obviously, I'm one of the 4 members of Delving the Chronicles, the Wheel of Time podcast. And we have been a podcast for 6 months now. We are bi-weekly. And you probably know me from moderating. You see me in chats. And also at WatCon. And especially I work with the Discord of WatCon, and you'll see me there for sure if you decide to even get a virtual membership. So you'll see me all around there, and I'll pass it off to Morshadi.
Hi, I'm Morshadi. I have been around the Twitter of Time and now just the Watts guys of Time, or whatever we're deciding to name ourselves eventually. I'm Morshadi. I'm the fact checker Mihail. Depending on the server, I'm also the sexy Morshadi. It really kind of depends. I am just I started my time on the internet knowing a lot of facts because I just kept reading the damn things over and over and over again. And I have provided my services to the internet. Now I'm on a podcast. Several podcasts nice. occasionally stream games and decide to get tilted at them. So yeah, I'll toss this over now to Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth. And I don't even really know what to say about myself. I stream video games on Twitch several days a week. I'm a lifelong fan of the Wheel of Time. I have been alive longer having the Wheel of Time in my life than not having the Wheel of Time in my life.
Nice.
And hello, Bane and Chad. I see you in chat. And I'm so excited to be part of this podcast. I've always wanted to do something like this. And when Shadi came to me and asked me to be involved, I was super duper excited. And the Wheel of Time is a lifelong passion of mine, and I love being able to have really substantive conversations with people who absolutely love this content as much as I do, and their lives have been changed and impacted by it as much as mine has. And thank you so much, Matt, for having us here. Thank you.
100%. And last but not least,
I'm Koala Sadai from the Madlands, and I think starting this podcast has just been a really extra special entry into the fandom for me because it's just so much fun when we get together and start digging into things together. I kind of got a bit known, I think, for making too many parodies. And that's
no
really
such thing. No such thing.
That's a lie.
I really want to get into it again, but it's kind of petered out because I had my son, his partner, and a grandchild born in the house and living with me for nearly a year. And wow, does that stomp on your parody making. But maybe I'll get back into it. I do have my own channel and I do release little bits of what content at times, particularly watching with my non-book reader friend, Kathy. That's been really super fun because she is in hook, line and sinker. And I can't wait till she sees the stuff that we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. Yeah, no, you all, this is the first time, Morshadi, you've been on the Dusty Wheel.
Yep.
The other three of you have been here before, but it all seems like you're really excited about what you're doing with the podcast, and that's a lot of fun. I listened to the podcast that you did with Lauren about the topic or a portion of the topic we're going to talk about tonight, and I was like, oh, we haven't done like a dedicated discussion about Rhuidean, and we should, because obviously, like we saw in the teaser trailer for season 3, we're going there, right? We're gonna go to this place, and so I thought, why not like do a primer for those of us that have been reading the books, and for those of you out there that don't mind spoilers from the books about this city and what things that happen there, because we don't know exactly what the show will do. We do know what the books and what Robert Jordan did with this place. So we'll dig into that. We're not going to jump there right now. We're going to take just a few minutes because there was some news today. It'd be weird to not talk about Wheel of Time news, even though my fellow Innkeeper did an episode this morning and covered this news. I'm sure the 4 of you have seen this news already, but I did want to kind of get your reactions and not spend too much time here, but just like the first thing that came to mind, or when you saw this news, what's the thing that excited you? Don't feel like you have to name every single person that I'm about to show on the screen and say something nice about them. I just want what was that initial reaction when this news dropped? So yeah, if all of you don't know, we had this announcement drop about 5 members of the cast, and those included Fail, Bear, Melaine, Rhuarc, and Melindra. So, I mean, I know what my reaction was. So let me jump back to the 4 of you. And Beth, yeah, what was when you saw this news drop? So, I mean, we had heard about Fail, I think.
Okay.
But like, what was your initial reaction when you saw the new cast?
Okay. So Rhuarc is a silver fox. I'm here for the representation of the Gen X attractive person. I'm here for it. And the actress who's playing Fail is absolutely stunning. Like stunningly beautiful. Just like,
Oh, is she? She's Australian.
amazingly gorgeous. I think they really did a great job with the casting. So, but Rhuarc, mwah, mwah, mwah. I wish he'd have a little red in his hair. You know what I mean? Like,
But
the
he might on the
silver-
show.
He might on the
But he
show.
might on the
He
show.
might on
Like,
the show.
Yeah, that's not him
But-
in costume.
He's definitely eye candy for the 50+ crowd is all I'm gonna say. And maybe for the 30+. I mean, I'm not judging.
Yeah.
But definitely for the 50+ crowd, he's definite eye candy for sure.
Gotcha. More Shadi, what was your reaction to the casting news?
I thought it looks great. In terms of the characters themselves, like
Yeah.
the actors themselves, I think they're going to be interesting. I mean, I personally, one of the big things that I love about the show is just the costuming and the backgrounds. That's really what makes this show. I think one of the most interesting things, and this is back to Rhuarc, the actor during COVID and the pandemic started his own podcast, and it's very ASMR-ish podcast.
Oh, really?
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yes. So he's about to show.
Yeah.
He's about to pick up quite a few followers.
Wait a minute, are you serious?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was part of it. Did you all not go through everyone's bio?
What have you been
No,
doing
I
all
did
day?
not. I was working today. I have a job.
Oh
I
my
had
God.
to work.
Yes. So
Got up at 1
you might-
a.m. to see what was happening.
Yeah. So like,
Now God.
yeah, it's about his travels and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it's gonna be in Norwegian or whatever, but it's very, very. So yeah,
He's starting an English version.
Oh, is he? All right. Well, there you
Yep.
go.
Nice.
The
I love that
There
Rhuarc's
is-
gotten 2 call outs so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's made an impression.
and then just like some of the changes are interesting, and let's just say I'm eating popcorn while watching the internet.
Yeah. No, that's a good reaction. By the way, since we've talked about this character, I mean, is this what do you think, Koala? Is that Rhuarc walking next to Ram?
Absolutely. Definitely.
That's That's the ASMR
without a doubt.
man himself. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
even better than Nicolas Cage's
think-
coat coming out in the beginning of Face Off.
I think Rhuarc having his own ASMR podcast, Rhuarc, like you can totally see it in the Aiel waist. He's just like, and
Yeah.
then, yeah.
And welcome to Purple Rock's Hold.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Due to COVID pandemic conditions, Landberg began producing the podcast Bet am Strand that offers relaxing, sensual short stories about worldwide
Nice.
traveling.
Nice. I think you just like convinced Beth to like, I'm out of here. Rhuidean is not that
Broke me.
interesting.
You broke me.
Let's before we get Dana and Koala's commentary here, let me end this poll. What will drop for the next Watt Wednesday? Half and half of you, posters, arts, or the like, or BTS clips, Q&A, cast date news. Not as much support for like a cold open new trailer, and then there's none of the above. But most of you are kind of thinking kind of those initial drops, which makes sense. Now I got to ask that question that I just asked. Is that Rhuarc on, during the teaser trailer? Yes or no? I should put.
Make it a dusty poll. Go on.
I'm gonna say. 1 second. You'll like these. There we go.
And I would like to correct myself. That the gentleman is German. It is the person playing Melindra who is Norwegian.
That's even hotter, actually. Just gonna say.
There's your teaser. There's your question up there.
Yep. It's a dusty poll. Thank you.
You're
Of course,
welcome.
I have to vote for that one.
Koala, how about you? What was your first reaction to the news today?
Okay. So there are two words. And
Okay.
I have been on this team the whole time. Elaine, Mullane.
Elaine Mullane.
Yes,
Late
yeah.
Mullane.
Yeah, right.
here
Okay.
for
That teaser trailer image is Mullane. Absolutely.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't done the whole Kevin blurring the face in and out, but I have put them on the screen side by side, flipped her around so she's facing the same way. That's definitely Mullane in the teaser trailer, and
By the way,
I'll just die on that hill.
poll
It was someone beside the horse too.
Exactly. I'm with you there.
I was always with you on that one. Always.
By the way, I was not with you with Mullane, but now that you're with me with the horse thing, I might change my mind. So
Hey, there you go.
Thank you.
This was the image. If you weren't watching when I did the poll, I guess if you just got here and you missed it, yes, is that Rhuarc walking next to Rand? That's the question, everybody. That's the question. And last but not least, Dana, what was your thought?
Melindra is Malkieri.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yes. If you don't know, there was like a little bit of like a blurb about these actors that was released. And yes, Melindra, they said was a Malkieri. Yeah, that was Malcurious to me.
It is indeed.
Yes,
I did
other
release
thing-
a little 4.5 minute video on it just a couple of hours ago, just with some loony theories. Yeah.
that's important. You gotta get the loony
gonna be
theories
fun.
found.
Yeah, my other thing was the fact that we get two definite wise ones, and what we've been seeing in the teaser trailer. And we had known about potential castings through Watt series before, and we had not gotten one for Amis. And so that one still concerns me. And I find it odd that you would, if there is going to be Amis, I find it odd that you would announce Rhuarc and two other wise ones and not announce Amis. And so is Mullane going to marry Rhuarc and have his babies? Like,
Not.
like Amis is my go-to. That's the first person I think of when I think wise one is Amis.
Same.
So I'm still a little bit hopeful, but I'm girding my loins.
This goes out
that
to
we
my
might not have Amis.
this goes out to my fellow innkeeper. It feels like there's enough here. Like I have to go back and watch the morning episode because it feels like there's going to be this like build up of like what's happening with Melaine and Melindra here. Anyway, that's I'm curious. The one thing that stuck with me was they said What Wednesdays were back. Basically, it did feel like that, right?
They officially announced what Wednesdays.
It does. It felt like it was like an official like What Wednesdays are back kind of feel. Did everyone agree with that?
Oh,
Like,
very much.
okay.
Yeah,
Like we're 10
very
weeks
much.
out, right? So that's like,
Yeah.
like this is a sad thing. Is how disappointing will it be if they don't do something next Wednesday? That'd be weird. It's like What Wednesdays are back every other week. That's what we meant.
I mean, listen. As long as they give us a schedule for us to drool and get rabbit over, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
They gotta get us prepped and get us prepared. And give us back our tweeter of chaos. They knew how to get us going and how to rev us up, right? They knew where to tickle us a little bit on those theories, and it's coming up soon. March is just around the corner. Like
8 more weeks.
Yeah, I mean I know that this is true. I saw Dawson say, "No, it's official. It was official. Read the press release." No, I know. I'm just saying it was. It came out that like this is gonna be What Wednesday. It's just like sometimes like I don't know that they actually interpret it the same
August
way we interpret
2023.
it.
Just remember, August
I don't know that
2023, right?
I don't know if they interpret it the same way we interpret it. It's like, so what you're saying is, and they're like, well, we were just saying it's back. We didn't say it was back every Wednesday.
But
that's my
wording
hope.
of it made it seem like it might be every Wednesday. Like
Yes.
Oh,
And that's-
August really seemed like that year too, you know.
you're not lying.
They're
You're
never going to
not
let that
lying.
down, rightfully so. Okay, so you're right, and I'm gonna show the press release here because internet, and that's what you can do. Today, Prime Video announced these actors have joined the cast for the series. Highly
Can you
anticipated
zoom
for
in
the
a little
season.
bit, maybe?
Oh yeah, I can. I've been known to zoom in.
Yes, you have.
This news also marks the New Year's return of What Wednesdays, a fan favorite weekly reveal of news and assets.
Weekly.
There we go. News and assets leading up to the show's season premiere. So you're right. This would be a weird, that's what I'm saying. It'd be like a weird choice to not make good on this. Should be like zoom in. Hey, Amazon, yeah, remember this. Remember this.
Listen, that
We won't forget
comma,
that.
that comma just means it's describing what Wednesdays are. I'm saying grammatically, that is exactly what it's doing.
You're like, there's no guarantee, no guarantee ever. So yeah, I do like their assets. I like that light blinded fool. Nice. So yeah, and that was the question before. It was like, okay, what are the assets? Are those clips? Are those posters? Or other art? That would be interesting to
is
see
it
what they
merch?
Yes,
Is
and
it
yes.
merch?
Stop with
Can
the
we
merch
please
stuff.
get
No,
some merch?
No,
no.
that's
See,
never going to happen.
Mershadi and I are in the same. No, let's not even talk merch at this point.
Yeah,
No.
we're just not.
No.
Just
the merch-
find your favorite Etsy artist and just buy it from them.
The merch boat has passed. Is that
let's
Ruark
talk
during the
the fun
teaser
stuff.
trailer, by the way? That got 86%. A Beth yes and a yes. A Beth yes got 52%. So you got some you got some fans out there, for a Beth yes. I love it. Okay. So, what is merch?
Is this merch?
That's a great question.
Yeah, what is merch? What do we need merch when we got, like books?
Yeah, exactly.
I was looking at this thing. This is, I realized, I looked this thing up today. This is a 1992 copy. This was my
nice.
original
Yeah.
one. I lost my original Eye of the World.
Beautiful.
Mine's looking pretty rough, but it is a first edition.
Oh, you should
sad.
you should ask Beth about my copy of Eye of the World that she saw back in December.
It's looking bad.
That is no longer a book. It's
Mine's just up there.
It's on life support.
Who needs,
Yeah,
who needs
no.
merch when you got books?
It's
For
a
real.
Frankenstein of a book.
yeah, it's fair.
Okay, so we're here, everybody, not to talk about that news today. Yes, we've covered it. We're already a half an hour in, everybody. So let's jump on to the main topic of today's show, which is obviously How do you pronounce it, koala? Go ahead.
Rhuidean. Oh, I'm
Rhuidean.
not koala. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, good.
Rhuidean.
Yeah,
No,
go
you
ahead.
are not, but you could be.
No, go ahead, koala. Go ahead.
Rhuidean.
Okay, Beth.
Rhuidean.
Morshadi.
Rhuidean.
Zool.
Rhuidean.
Okay.
Yes,
So Matt, you're wrong.
we
You're wrong.
stand together.
You're all wrong because to start off any conversation in the Wheel
No,
of Time,
it's wrong. That's wrong. We know
any
that's
conversation in the Wheel of Time has to begin with a pronunciation conversation.
wrong.
And
It
by
is
the
not
way,
Rhuidean. That's dumb. Nobody says that.
I just want to point
Rhuidean,
out.
I mean, come
I
on.
just want to point out the the in the back of the books that you were all talking about that you had. I never really paid attention to this stuff, but I am going to pay attention to it today. It's it's pronounced RHUY, all in capital letters. So that's where the emphasis is. Everybody, try that again.
Which
Koala,
would
what'd you
be,
say?
which in the Madlands would be Rui, right? Rui Dian.
And then
Yeah.
Dion. Yeah, Dion.
Are
Yeah.
you gonna
Okay.
are you
It's
gonna
still
let
Rhuidean.
I
All
mean
right,
are you gonna let
here's
Michael and Kate know that they've been pronouncing Rhuidean incorrectly in all of their narrations?
here's what I'm going to say to that, Matt. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. There's two ideas on this. One
Yeah,
is death. You know, the concept of death of the author, right? And once it's out there, it belongs to the people who read it. Second, authors can be wrong because Robert Jordan also said it's pronounced lawn. No, I'm sorry, it's not. It's land. I'm sorry. Okay, it's okay. Robert Jordan, you're wrong.
Look, so I agree with that thought process when it's a word that I don't want to have to change in my vocabulary either. So, like, I eventually started saying Taim, even though tame made a lot more sense. So I'm going to ask. So I did find on Encyclopedia Watt, which is not technically like you can. It's like still fan
It's not
run.
sanctioned.
So,
Yeah.
but I still will play it for us all to listen to. So here we go.
Rhuidean.
Yeah.
I think you should have a poll, Matt. You should
I'm gonna have a poll. I'm gonna.
You should-
Of course, there's gonna be a poll, Beth. Of course, there's gonna be a poll.
Where do you think you are?
Like you've been on the show before. There's a poll that follows everything.
And Matt,
So-
at the end of the day, it's a made-up word.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how Rhuidean?
As
By the
are
way,
all words.
Rhuidean is how I used to always pronounce it. So now, how would you do that? Ru and then dash like ROO dash I.
Yeah, like a kanga. Yeah.
And then Dean, DEAN, or that's Dean.
D-double-E dash
So
A-N.
Rhuidean. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
So how do you still say Tarvalon or do you say Tarvalon now?
What do you mean? I say it the right way. It's Tarvalon.
It's
Absolutely it is.
Tarvalon.
What
No,
do you?
it's not. It's Tarvalon.
No.
Innkeeper-
Like Avalon.
I have
Like
to talk
Avalon.
to my innkeeper out there. Can you give me the link to Robert Jordan pronouncing this the proper way, please? If you could send it to me, I just don't have time to find it right now.
So, Beth, does that mean that you say, how do you say Avalon?
Call it Tarvalon because I always read it as Tarvalon. I know
But how
it's
do you
named
say
after
Avalon?
Avalon, but it's Tarvalon
Right.
because I'm Merkin. It's Merca. It's Tarvalon.
I'm a Texan, and I
Look,
say
you know we had to
Tarvalon.
start here, everybody. You didn't think we were going to get too far before we got to pronunciations, did you?
That's true.
I mean,
Rhymes with Talon. Yes, Brother Buddha. Rhymes with Talon.
Okay.
Tarvalon.
is there another way you've heard this pronounced other than Rhuidean and Rhuidean? Is there like a third? Those are just the two, right? How do Michael and
That's
Kate
the
pronounce that one, by the way?
Rhuidean.
See, Rhuidean was always how I pronounced it, but I think
That's
that's
how
how
we
like
pronounce it.
I think that's how Brandon pronounced it, and then like at a panel, they were like he said it that way, and then Maria was like no, and then Maria pronounced it. By the way, this is just verbatim text someone written, so it's like Rhuidean, and then Maria Rhuidean. And then it's like people laugh, and then Brandon's like, "That's how you say Rhuidean," and all it is the same word. Like I don't know. Like it's like
No, it's data. No, actually, it's data.
It's data.
No,
It's
no,
data.
you're supposed to say it data.
so.
It gets like that on the wheel weaves with them pronouncing with the Canadian accent, and they're like,
Oh, yeah,
it
absolutely.
sounds
Okay.
the same to me, and where everyone else like, no, it doesn't.
Okay. Here we go. Let's see.
The only
Balloon-
other pronunciation I can think of would be something like Rhuidean, which
Okay.
would be really bad, but I've never heard anyone say that.
He he sent me. Hold on. Oh yeah, here we go. This is.
I'm
this
taking my
is-
headphones out now.
I hate
This is
that,
the-
but that's fine. So let's play Robert Jordan saying Tarvalon.
Tarvalon, which I thought was quite self-evident. Tarvalon, which I thought was quite self-evident. Tarvalon, which I thought was quite self-evident.
That's correct. Robert Jordan just said Tarvalon, which I thought was quite self-evident.
I mean, he thought it was obvious who killed Asmodean too.
So there you go. That's Tarvalon. Now I'm going to ask the audience, which is the correct
Spoiler alert,
pronunciation
alert.
of Rhuidean. It's Rhuidean and then Rhuidean. Here we go. And then we're going to move on from here. Sorry.
Yes,
Look,
please.
I had to start. We had to start here. We have to start here. Like it's like foundational.
Rhuidean.
Like how do you pronounce
Every walk
this word?
conversation.
Yeah.
I love how it's just bouncing between one of the other 50%.
And so, however, this is the deal we'll make. However they choose it, we'll pronounce it today during our live stream.
I mean, we already
No.
pronounce it the right way anyway. You're the
I
only one
refuse.
who's going to
I
have to
refuse.
change.
No,
I refuse.
we are unanimous.
I know. By the way,
It's all right. The right way to say it's going to win, so it's all right,
No.
Shadi.
it does.
I'm-
It does
Yeah.
seem like the way
Yeah,
that I
it's
used
over
to say it.
70%.
So like I
Yeah.
said, we're gonna all. I'm willing to say it. The
All right,
likely
you
wrong
can
way.
say it. Yeah.
You can.
It was really funny. Is it Falma? And I was saying Falme.
Yeah.
And then like I was like on a podcast with Maria Simmons, who is Robert Jordan's assistant.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, people were saying Falm, and I was like, yeah, no, it's Falme. And she goes, and I think she was like, no, it's Falma. And I was like, dang. I was like, I thought I had it right. But if Maria says it, then you follow the Maria pronunciation. That's just what you do. Okay.
It's very
So
true.
while they're voting on Rhuidean, how do you all say Mullane?
Mullane.
Mullane.
Elaine.
There are
Mullane.
sometimes
Because-
like, yeah,
Because
go
I
ahead.
was listening to John from What Up this morning, and he said Melanie, and I was like,
oh,
That's not how you spell Melanie
Yeah.
anyway I've ever seen. So
okay.
well,
I've always
it's
said
got an E
Mullane.
on the end, but
I've
it's
always
got
said-
an E
yeah,
on
but
the end.
but
and
no,
some
none of the E's.
no, I
None of the
know,
E's that
but
we have
some-
are long or are E. They're
about-
all E or A.
like Matt Naludra said,
I know,
how
but
about Cloud
I
City?
was like,
Yeah.
I like that Elfwitch. Mullane. Mullane.
Mullane.
There you
Mullane.
go. Oh my gosh. Pronunciation is so amazing.
it is.
Yeah.
It
By the
is.
way, Michael Kramer and Kate Redding have often said, like, it doesn't, like, just pronounce it the way you want to pronounce it. They're like,
Yeah.
we weren't even given
Exactly.
we were just given the text, not any pronunciation guides. When
I
we
mean,
first had to do it,
depending on
so.
the book, Mogedion has 42 different pronunciations. So that absolutely rings true.
Well, it makes sense. I made this comment last week. They were doing a Forsaken episode, and I was like, I feel like Robert Jordan was having fun with us by naming the Forsaken, because he's just like
Listen,
Semirog, Demandred. You know what I mean? Like you have to you need like a key to kind of figure out some of those names. So,
listen. Okay. Oh, here and to kind of bring it back to where our topic is. He named the Jenn Aiel after a freaking stove. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
Mhm.
well, it is
And I mean, if
Rhuidean.
we can have trouble pronouncing the three-letter word name, we're in trouble with everything, right? If we can't all agree on land,
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I think we can all agree on land.
We can
Land
all
is
agree.
exactly
well,
how
yeah,
you,
we
how you
can
pronounce
here.
his name.
We can here,
Except for Robert
definitely.
Jordan.
So that being said, Rhuidean is winning this. About 102 of you voted that we're all gonna say Rhuidean. I know you were worried about that. The four of you clearly
so
were.
I was so frightened.
You
I
were
was gonna have
sweating
to-
that. So we're just going to go with like the audience rules here. Our pronunciation for today is going to be Rhuidean. I'm going to end that poll. And let's jump into this. So one of the things I really wanted to talk about, like, what had to do with like the city itself. And so I'm going to read this portion from the Shadow Rising. From a spoiler perspective, we are going to be bringing in like knowledge from outside of the Shadow Rising. At first it'll start there, but we'll quickly kind of get outside of it a little bit. but we're not here to like spoil the books. I don't think there's anything that's going to like ruin the end of the series or anything like that. Is there, am I misremembering here? I'm just like, we're talking about the city itself. So, and as you start breaking past Fires of Heaven with something, let's just let people know if you want to go somewhere with it. For right now, we'll try to stay near the end of Fires of Heaven. But if we're going to go beyond that, then we'll throw up a spoiler warning. So, with that being said, I want to read this passage and talk about the city that Rand and Matt find. This is the quote I didn't get up, so I just have it off to my side. I'll just read it here. As they're coming up to it, it says, "The fog made an enormous hollow dome hiding the sky, its bubbling inner surface glowing in a pale, sharp blue," which, by the way, nod to the teaser trailer on the sharp blue. Rhuidean was not nearly so big as Tyr or Camelin, but the empty streets were broad as any he had ever seen, with wide strips of bare dirt down their centers as if trees had grown there once, and great fountains with statues. Huge buildings flanked the streets, odd flat-sided palaces of marble and crystal and cut glass, ascending hundreds of feet in steps or sheer walls. There was not a small building to be seen, nothing that might have been a simple tavern or an inn or a stable, only immense palaces with gleaming columns 50 feet thick, climbing 100 paces in red or white or blue, and grand towers fluted and spiraled, some piercing the glowing clouds above. For all its grandeur, the city had never been finished. Many of those tremendous structures ended in the saw teeth of abandoned construction. Colored glass made images in some huge windows. Severely majestic men and women 30 feet tall or more. Sunrises and starry night skies. Others gaped emptily. Unfinished and long deserted. No water splashed any fountain. Silence covered the city as completely as the dome of fog. The air was cooler than outside, but just as arid. Dust grated underfoot on pale, smooth paving stones. Like, yeah, like when you picture this, what are you seeing in your heads?
The dust is a really big thing I see. Oh, sorry.
No, we all started at the same time.
No, go for it, Koala. What were you saying?
Yes.
The dustiness is a really big thing that I see, because he talks about how wide the roads are and the dust, and there's no water in the fountains. So it's that real desolated kind of feeling that really always strikes me.
Yeah, like over everything, right? The one thing that hit me in this reading was there was not a small building to be seen. Nothing that might have been a simple tavern or inn or a stable. Nothing small, which is fascinating. When you think about when it was built, and this is a question. What a Holocaust. He said, did Rhuidean predate the end of Age of Legends? No, it did not. So
They didn't even go into the waste until 98 years after the end of the breaking. That is when Tarvalon was beginning to be built, and it's before they crossed the Dragon Wall, just before they crossed the Dragon Wall, and with Aes Sedai looking for a place to build this. So we know that it was at least 400 years or whatever, 500 years after the Boar.
Yeah, so it's something that was built after all of that, right? Which is fascinating.
You had to find the place and then build it.
Well, can you imagine
that would have to be used, because it was all done by hand, because you can assume that the one power probably wasn't used for that. So
actually they did say
some of it, but not all of it, right? Like
that the 4 Aes Sedai that were going with them to help them build it.
Yeah. But they weren't that wasn't the main source of where all of those structures came from. The thing that resounds for me is the epicness of it, because when you think about when we start with Eye of the World, remember the awe that they had when they got to Barillon? And they're like, this is a city. And then it got magnified when they went to Camelin, and they're like, oh, this is a city, right? And then Well, even before Camelin, Shadar
Shadar
Logoth,
Logoth.
the abandonment of Shadar Logoth, and or Shadar Logoth, depending on who you are. But Shadar Logoth was this huge city that was absolutely desolate and abandoned, but had like this tinge of evil. It wasn't unfinished; it was broken, right? It was deserted and it was broken. And then you have Camelin, and then you have the desensitization of cities because then you see them in Tyr and you see them in Kyrian. And then you have like this sprawling, like Rhuidean must dwarf those cities, like just must be so huge. And so the grandeur of it and the eeriness of it, I really, really hope that the show just is able to encapsulate that feeling of sheer vastness and almost like a sense of mourning, right? Because it's unfinished. I really hope that they are able to capture that.
Well, I mean, to the point, like he says in his mind, at least, it's not nearly so big as Tyr or Camelin, but he does talk here. There's another passage. Let me read this one. It says, "After they had walked a mile, the street suddenly ended at a great plaza, perhaps as far across as they had walked." Which,
jeez,
like, so I'm from the Chicago suburbs, and like, you know, the magnificent mile in Chicago. Like, the idea of walking a mile past, like, just think of city blocks, like, and then walking into a plaza that is as long as what they had just walked, and that's the center. So they walked to the center of the city, the heart of the city.
Yeah.
And so he says, ended at a great plaza, perhaps as far, no, maybe not exactly as far, but perhaps as far across as they had walked, and surrounded by those palaces of marble and crystal. Startlingly, a tree stood in the huge square, a good 100 feet tall. 100 feet. Sometimes I just, the scope of this, I lose. 100 feet is a huge tree. Like a huge tree, and spreading its thick, leafy limbs over a hide of dusty white paving stones near what appeared to be a concentric rings of clear, glittering glass columns, thin as needles compared to their height, nearly as much as the trees. He would have wondered how a tree could grow here without sunlight if he had not been too busy staring at the astounding jumble filling the rest of the square. A clear lane led from each street Matt could see straight to the columned rings, but in the spaces between, statues stood haphazardly, life-size down to half that, in stone or crystal or metal, set right down on the pavement. All among them were, he did not know what to call them at first, a flat silverly ring, 10 feet across and thin as a blade, a tapering crystal plinth. Is it plinth? How do you pronounce it? A paste tall that might have held one of a similar statues, a shiny black metal spire, narrow as a spear and no longer, yet standing on end as if rooted. Hundreds of things, maybe thousands, in every shape imaginable, every material imaginable, dotting the huge plaza with no more than a dozen feet between any two. Like, more shoddy, like this is like, it's almost, yeah, it is. I mean, it's almost Age of Legends, right? It is like a recreation of it. You know, we just talked about maybe the one power is being used. This was like, there's stone, crystal, and metal. Like, what is your imagination here? No, this is speculative, but what's your imagination here as far as like, where did the materials come from? Like,
and that's the thing is like, so looking at just, you know, the encyclopedia, I have it up on my screen here. Like the description is the Jenn Aiel, aided by Aes Sedai, began construction of the city of Rhuidean. Once they went into the waste, they wouldn't have gotten any materials from the other side of the Dragon Wall, right? So everything they got materials wise would have come from the surrounding area.
Yeah.
So all of that, they carved it from the land, they carved it from the local mountains, they carved it from whatever was there, and
but
likely,
but gateways, right?
Well, at that point,
we had this conversation on
Did you?
Sunday for our podcast recording.
Oh, so this is am I poking at like a conversation? People have to like see that we don't have to have like the recreation of the whole thing. Was a consensus like no, yes on that idea?
Kind of. we were trying to work out, like, if so many things have been lost, right,
Mhm.
by the time we get to Rand's
Yeah.
time, how and when did they get lost? You know, were they like lost bang, or were they lost over a period of time?
Mhm.
Yeah, because
Yep.
I mean,
Well,
there must have been a lot of one power involved, because these are generations down from the Dashane who left in the original wagons, and they weren't builders,
yeah.
right? And
Well,
they're generations down wandering the desert, trying to, just trying to keep alive. And suddenly they're building this city that's like mind blowing. So there must have been a lot of involvement. So, Shadi, you weren't with us on that last
mm-mm.
recording. So, gateways, tell us.
Well, and that's the thing is like if you want to think about whether or not gateways probably were being used, I would say yes, mainly because if you think of the prophecy of Rhuidean and where we see it first being mentioned, the Aes Sedai that were there were described as being, let's just say, a fuck ton old. All right, like, but
That's
they
your one
would not.
swear.
That's your one after.
I apologize.
On the dusty wheel. We're on the
On the
dusty
dusty-
wheel now.
I apologize. I used it up.
No,
Anyway,
bring us
so
one.
they were
Bring us
really,
one.
really old.
Done.
And so
You got it.
They would not have sworn oaths because they would not have been part of the White Tower. They would not have had any oaths to swear. And so we know that channelers would, without oaths on them, can grow up to nearly 1,000 years old. If those Aes Sedai were 1,000 years old, they would have known gateways.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah.
And
Yes.
so
And that led me to my question of, if they were Age of Legends, Aes Sedai, and where were they finding these other women to channel to replace them? And why weren't those women taught those weaves from the Age of Legends? If these women who were in Rhuidean were the same Aes Sedai who were alive during the Age of Legends, why did we lose the ability to do those things if these people were still alive for hundreds of years after the breaking?
well,
That's my question.
well, if you remember back when they lost some of the original files in the other visions, some Aes Sedai were distrustful and they just didn't trust anybody. On top of the fact, one of those Aes Sedai as well had foretellings, and they probably this is obviously conjecture, and they probably just like, we just cannot trust anybody. We are leading down to a path. This is exactly what
Your
we need.
logic has no room here.
This is the exact path we have to take. And it's possible they had a few more Aes Sedai and they just kept dying out. And eventually it just went down to those last two. And they went, nope, this is exactly the path. And to be perfectly honest, that entire sequence in those 2 chapters were literally about the fact that from beginning to end, end to beginning, this is the path that led to the Dragon Reborn. And so if they had the foretelling back from the beginning all the way to those last few Aes Sedai, they were not going to trust anybody else. Look how distrustful our normal Aes Sedai were.
You're
Like,
not allowed to
remind
miss a
me-
podcast recording again.
I
Remind me-
know, right?
Remind me on the
But there's-
gateway side, when you create a gateway, is it different between Sidar and Sidene? What you need to know?
The way you do
Yes.
it is,
The way
yeah.
you do
what
it,
you
and-
need
The way
to
you
know,
do it
no.
is, but not the
Yeah,
method of
not the result.
having to
Yeah.
know, not the result.
Yeah, not the result itself. But
But
like with
there's
Sidar, remind me,
something-
is it awareness of where you're at or where you're going?
That part of
Where
it is the same for
where you
both.
are.
That's the same for both.
But,
Okay.
have
Yeah,
to know
the
where
so
way
do you
are.
punch
you
a
make-
hole through or do you fold it? Yeah.
It's
Gotcha.
for Sidar,
Okay.
you have to make both locations the same. For Saidine, it's punching a hole to the locations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But
But
you
there's
still have to
another
know where
thing
you're
that-
from. But before we move on, I
Yeah.
want to come out on a different side of this argument and say that I don't think that they necessarily, those 4 new traveling, even if they were from the Age of Legends, because not every, just because they are doesn't mean they know it. And that's, I'm saying that because not everyone can do it because of power and talent, and not and Shadi talked about the trusting people, and not everyone even needed to know all the weaves because they all had different jobs and they all had different ideas of what they did with the power. Some people didn't even, who were Aes Sedai, didn't use the power even that much for whatever their jobs were, those who could channel. So that just because they were all spread out all over the place, and maybe the more powerful ones died fighting, and these were some other ones, and they were the ones who were tasked to go do this.
But
so
the only thing I would
got
say
one
is
more that's come to me while Shadi was talking, is that also the Age of Legends Aes Sedai, they made a lot of use of Ungreal and ter'angreal. And that's what these Jenn Aiel are carrying through the waste. The Aes Sedai aren't even really using that anymore. So there might have been a lot of loss of being able to do things because people who could do them easily when they were using artifacts didn't have them anymore. And so they're not even going to be able to really teach it if they can't do it anymore. So, yeah.
So the only reason I would say this is I feel like it has to have been only, I mean, when you describe the city, and maybe we just don't have a concept of number of people here, but to build a city the size we're talking about, even over a long period of time, like some of these buildings were left, like they're not done yet, but the type of materials we're talking about, the quantity of those materials, and considering the number they did, as far as I know, like it's kind of hard to believe that all of these ter'angreal were brought with them, or sangreal. Like I would imagine some were, but the types they're talking about and the size of some of these things, it feels like they were like trying to bring some with, but the idea of using, I mean, you can use portal stones for this. Like you can transfer from portal stone to portal stone. We know there's a portal stone close enough for this. And so they could have used that if they didn't, for some reason, the world had changed so much that you couldn't have used a gateway, perhaps. I mean, maybe they had to go out and journey a bit and go to some old cities. It brings to mind some of the, if I think about it, like The Walking Dead, if you've seen the show, right? It's like they go to a city and the city's like totally destroyed and, and there are a few people there and they have to watch out and be careful. But like once they've established where it is and they find something, they could gateway back, but they have to be careful of who comes back with them, right? They have to, the knowledge of where the city is, right? The whole point of them taking them away was not so others could find them. And like this was, at least my reading of this is it was meant to stay unknown. It was not meant to stay like to be known. So, but it doesn't make any sense to me that they could have just made all the stuff. Like I don't know. Well, yes, it's like one power. The one power can do things, but I get it. But like, it's hard to imagine like the one power did all of this versus the one power enabled them to get access to materials to do this, I guess.
The enormity. Yeah.
And we don't know that, some of these ter'angreal, maybe did things like help them cut the stone and move. Cut the stone and move stuff, and they had access. To some things like that.
I like that Rajesh just said the building of Rhuidean could be its whole prequel movie. It could. I
was thinking that too, yeah.
When you get the scope of the city and you just read those words again of them walking in, because again, there's all these, it's like all these people. I mean, I looked up on the internet to see, like I Googled pictures that people have drawn. And this was one, it was like, that starts to kind of, like, because you don't know where it ends. You don't know where it ends. Like, okay, it goes back, and you're like, okay, that's a lot. Because some of the images I've seen are like, maybe it's just our scope of trying to be able to imagine it. But it's like, no, these things this is a huge, like, if the plaza is almost a mile across, and it takes you a mile walk to get to it, we're talking about almost a 3 mile, 3 miles to go from end to end. And no taverns. It's just these palaces and huge like buildings made of metal and crystal and the like. You're like, of all materials imaginable. This is just like it's a fantastical city, almost like a recreation. And that's why I did want to I wanted to take like a couple minutes here and talk about like why. Like, I mean, honestly, like,
Why?
like everything, no, but like, everything we understand to be the rationale, and we'll talk about that here shortly, of like, why did they do this? And maybe I'll read this and you can tell me. I took this one from the Big White Book. Everybody out there have the Big White Book. This is under the chapter for Rhuidean. And it says, within the great unfinished city, however, the Jenn were dying out. Despite the best efforts of the Aes Sedai, their plans and the prophecy were unraveling. The Aes Sedai realized that they had made a mistake. If a child was to be born of the Aiel to fight the Dark One, he would not be born of the Jenn. But the Aes Sedai had no ties with the nomadic Aiel warriors. In order to save the prophecy, and perhaps Aes Sedai control of it, they had to find a way to share the truth with the warriors in a way that would not destroy them as well. So within the heart of Rhuidean, the Aes Sedai, there was a cut there between that. That's not, it was a new chapter. Within the heart of Rhuidean, the Aes Sedai prepared a great ter'angreal that contained within it all the history of the Aiel. And then eventually the last of the Jenn and the Aes Sedai died, but not before the Aes Sedai placed machinery of power to protect Rhuidean from outsiders and preserve it for the Aiel. Now, this comes with a huge caveat. The Big White Book was written as like a historian's view on information. So this is not meant to be taken with like, you know, breaking the fourth wall. This is the author telling us. This is a historian's view of it. But there's some interesting pieces here that do largely play out to the way we understand that they played out. So with that thought in mind, you know, Zul, why were they building a city that went unfinished and they noticed they were dying out, and then obviously they were like, okay, that's not going to work. Like, what was the point of this city in your mind?
Okay, so their charge from the Aes Sedai was to preserve themselves, keep the covenant, and find a place of safety, right? So that's what they were supposed to do. So when they found this place of safety, the Jenn were preparing a place, I think, of like to be like maybe one of the cities from the Age of Legends, but that it was to be the place for the Aiel. Like that's what I think in their mind, this place was supposed to be a place that was protected and a safe haven. They had water fountains. They had, you know, all of this. Now, why they didn't have any smaller buildings and they only had bigger buildings?
right.
It's so bizarre, right?
Like it's bizarre. It's bizarre. Like palaces for whom? You know,
it's kind of like going down to the, like, you know, the center of one of our big cities where it's like all of the small buildings have been replaced by large buildings, and it's just these big, tall, monstrous buildings, you know, and they're in complexes. And so, like, you know, they're all multifamily complexes, you know, when you have like apartments, there's no individual family homes. And so it is rather bizarre. I love that it's bizarre, but I also love the fact that they didn't realize that they were going to die out. They thought that they were going to, they spent hundreds of years building this, right? So it's like generations. There were like 6 generations, I think, 4 generations or 6 generations from the time they crossed the Dragon Wall to the time that the first clan Sept chiefs were called by the Aes Sedai and the Jenn to come, you know, go to Rhuidean and go through the glass columns. And at that point, Avendesora was only, I think, like 18 feet tall or something. If you look at it's like 3 spans or something. Anyway, it's which is about like 18 feet, and now it's over 100 feet, right? So it's that measure of time, and the Jenn had not died out yet. Yeah. So they still had more time to keep building after that point.
I mean, it's almost like they're building it. I see Jordan did so many, pulled so much from biblical references and from historical references. It very heavily leans on like the Egyptian pharaohs and the building of the pyramids, and it would take lifetimes to build these monuments that would be enacted to
Interesting.
their pharaohs. But at the same time, when you do a historical study of the first century church, early Christianity, the apostles Paul and writers of the early Bible believed that the coming of Christ was going to be imminent. They didn't know that it was going to be thousands of years down the road. Still hasn't happened if you're Christian. And so maybe they wanted a city that was worthy of
that's
the Karakarn.
Yeah, that's what Roadster Gaming. That's where I was kind of like, oh yeah, it sounds like it was a place to be the birth and raise the Dragon Reborn.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to think about it, because Michael Livingston in Origins of the Wheel of Time, under the Rhuidean, he said a city built by the Jenn Aiel to house a great number of powerful objects preserved for the Aes Sedai, as well as the sacred tree of Endosora. Rhuidean has a name that echoes Irish Rhuidean, which refers to the residences of fairies, similar to the Aes Sedai or something, the Sea Aes Sedai, while also implying the ruin into which the city has fallen. More importantly, just as the Aiel have a number of parallels to ancient Israelites, Rhuidean can be seen as a parallel to Jerusalem. In particular, it holds echoes of the sacred precinct atop the Temple Mount, which is maintained by a specific tribe of the Israelites, the Levites. In this parallel, the glass columns of Rhuidean, which reveal the truth of the Aiel, but cause many to go mad and die, is akin to legends, some quite recent in origin, of the Ark of the Covenant and its place within the Holy of Holies and the Well of Souls. Of note, the glass columns were originally a circle standing stones akin to Stonehenge. Like an interesting kind of like, and I'm going to say it this way, hubris, like in my head.
Oh,
These
yeah.
people, I just go like,
yeah.
like we're gonna save this world, and yes, we have these foretellings, these prophecies, and so we're gonna create this city, and this is where the Dragon Reborn he'll be raised here, and it'll be part of this is the city that will save the world. Basically, that's what it feels like. Rajesh said, in a comment, he's like, Rajesh goes like immediately. He goes, I like how they went straight to, now we have to make Manhattan. It's like, I was like, what? Like, but that kind of hubris, that kind of like, we are this like, we're saving this world.
Human.
And this is the city upon which it's going to be saved. When you add that to it, I think is more.
I like
Shadi, you were going to
the
say something.
Temple Mount thing, yeah. I like the whole Temple Mount thing because of like the Jenn Aiel being the lost tribe, and like the Levites who were the ones over Temple Mount. Like I really like that parallel there. I think that's
well, and then a lot of that too ends up being the Jenn Aiel. there's an amazing parallel between the Jenn Aiel and obviously the Tuathan, right? Because they're both stuck in the past. Yeah. The Jenn Aiel and the Tuathan are both stuck in the past for looking for the Age of Legends. They're looking for wanting to bring the past into the future. They're wanting to bring it back and into a better, where they're trying to bring the Age of Legends again, right? That's what they're trying to do, and it's because there was peace at some point, whether or not they remember it or not. It's exactly what they were trying to bring back peace for themselves. And so they also, when it comes to the Jenn Aiel, they see themselves as something separate and sacred because they kept to the covenant. Because if you look at how they lived, right, they lived in those, either in their wagons or once they found their land, they built those structures the way they think how the Age of Legends probably looked. Yeah. Versus the Aiel and the rest of the clans, how did they lived with the land? They built their holds in the land. They built their holds in caves. They built their holds hidden, so that way, because of reasons of like wars and reasons of battles and reasons to stay cool and within water distance and being able to farm correctly and things like that. So like they kept themselves separate. So they always kept themselves above, as if like they were better. And so why wouldn't they build a better city than the Aiel who broke the covenant?
Yeah, no, that's, oh man, it's fascinating. And by the way, they definitely knew there was water under there, like, and
Oh, yeah.
probably were using it, but
Oh,
not
yeah.
like in a way that they were like, hey, let's keep water coming up and supplying these people with water that are on the outside. No, like you said,
yeah.
their sacred city, their sacred, like,
Right.
yeah, like this
Sure.
is, we're holding to this. You did not hold to this. We are going to raise up the, the dragon reborn among the Jenn Aiel. And then it was like, oh shoot, this isn't working out the way that we thought it was. Now, how do we still make use of this thing that we've built? And it became like, and that's what's interesting is it became like a testing ground in a way that it wasn't intended at first. Is that fair to say that Rhuidean was
Correct.
not like
Correct.
these ter'angreal were not built, like it wasn't like we're going to go
No.
and bring them over here and make this thing. It was just like, okay, now we have to do this because this plan A didn't work out. Here's plan B, which is fascinating to me about Rhuidean. I just see like, I mean, they walk through that city and all I can think of is just like, these people were crazy. like what are you, but I get it.
Yeah.
Like I saw somebody in chat say like they
Of
had
course they
more
were.
knowledge than most people, right? They did have a lot of, like, they had knowledge and power. They were trying to make sure that, male channelers didn't like destroy what they were doing, right? They were trying to stay secret and private, and I get it, but but yeah, it's a beautiful city, but yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that you talked about, the machinery that help protect the city, one of the things that it does is makes it so that it's not seeable or knowable even in ter'angreal.
Yeah.
Right.
What is that city? That Shangri-La? The lost city of Shangri-La? Isn't that
yeah, like you can't just
hidden
find
in
it
the mountains? You can't
Yeah.
find it? Yeah.
But that's more like the that's more like the Eye of the World, where what we saw in the first book.
That is, I mean, it's similar to that too, right?
Because in the mountains,
But it's still, it's what you were saying, and maybe, I don't know if you were going here. Were you going to talk about the fog, or were you going to talk about all the different
no,
pieces of
absolutely.
that?
We can definitely go there. Yeah. That's part of it. But
There's
I mean, go ahead.
Can I just do one thing before we go to the fog? Because I've been holding on to this when Matt was asking about the materials that they used.
Yeah.
Crystal is made of sand.
Sure.
Glass.
So,
crystal.
why was there a lot of crystal? Well, that was the easiest thing that they could create there. Okay, fog.
And when there's a mountain right there, right? It's at the base of the Chandiar mountain, like,
Chandiar.
and maybe there's marble in that mountain, so maybe marble was easily accessible. Like
Did you see in chat people were talking about the lake was originally a quarry?
Was a quarry.
Ooh,
interesting.
there you go.
That was going
There you
around
go.
in chat a little while ago. Yeah.
By the way, were gateways and portal stones used to ferry or portal stones used to ferry materials? 80% are kind of on board with that one. Yes, Rapunzel. This is a good one to go to. The machinery of power related to fogs. Yes, I mean that's like when you again.
The Machin Shinnery.
Did I miss
see
that?
what you did there, friend.
That's
Did I
what
miss-
Rapunzel says.
Typical
The
Rapunzel.
machinery of
Typical
power.
Rapunzel.
That's
I was
like,
so
well,
concentrated on like, yes, machine of power, or like that I did not see the Machin Shinnery of power. Sorry, Rapunzel, you deserve much more props for that than I gave. So I apologize. That's
Don't
so
worry,
good.
Rapunzel. We got your back. We got you. We got you.
As soon as you said that, I was like, I totally missed that. I get it. I was there. That's interesting. Fudgy said, I wonder if this machinery is in part a dream spike. Again, there's a lot of similarities between the techniques that they use with the ter'angreal, and that have to do with ter'angreal. You can find similarities between these ter'angreal. So, but it is quite fascinating that, and I think there is still a question, and maybe let's answer it for the audience that's watching us. The fog. I've seen theorizing that like the fog was really because you see a certain fog when you blow the horn of Alir, that it has some kind of bubble like technology, that this is like, it's in the world, but not in the world, right? It's somewhere between the dream world and the real world. Some kind of like you've gone in. I mean, you can even use the study of the portal stones in this. Like, is this some kind of like they were able to create a space where time passed much more slowly? And so, yeah, maybe any one of you feel free to jump in here. Remind us, why is it that fans think that there was a time dilation effect where time passed slower within Rhuidean as opposed to outside of Rhuidean? Go ahead. Yeah, go. Anyone.
I would say it's actually the opposite.
It passes out. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
It's opposite in that, like, one day on the inside is like 7 to 10 or whatever on the outside. So is that slower on the inside, or
that's slower on the inside?
Slower in the inside, yes.
That's
Slower
okay. So
on the
like
inside, absolutely.
every minute is like 10 minutes on the every minute on the inside is like 10 minutes on the outside. Okay, got it.
Yeah, why is it that people believe that? Because I'm guessing people haven't read this chapter. Like, why does that belief exist?
Shadi, you were going to say something.
Well, I mean, there's like multiple reasons for the time dilation thing, right? Because we have between the several chapters that they go in and come out, they Rand and Matt experience just when they're in there, and they're only in there what they feel like just within the day. They come back out and it's been 7 days, and they're like, holy hell. And then they have to wait for the rest of the people to come back out. And why would they be in there for so long? They didn't feel like it was so long. That's part of the time dilation. On top of that, the other time dilation that actually happens within it as well is like Rand going into the columns, Matt going into the redstone doorway. And at some point, like, there's another time dilation that happens for Rand going through those columns, whether it's he speeds up through those columns, but he has a lot of things going on because Matt got hung. You can only hang so long before you are
right. Like, you can't be hanging there for 3 days. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't be hanging there for 7 days or whatever. So he was only actually hanging from that branch for a little bit of time.
Miss Sarah James just said, wasn't the Shido clan chief candidate in there for days before he went in?
For quite a few days before he went in.
Yeah. So you have that piece. And then like these, I think, who is it? Moraine follows pretty quickly after, but then doesn't come out for how much longer?
3 more days.
Three more days.
Weren't they back for 3 days? And because Lan was like, how much longer do I have to wait before I,
Yeah, I'm going to,
no, it's because it was at, like sunset at the last day. She came out, right? And I mean, I think for me, the thing that resonates for me is that it's how can I explain it? Because it's so it's this timelessness of it, right? Of wanting to preserve the past but make way for the future. It's like this necessity, and I can't help but think of like other books that I've read that have similar kind of whether it's magic or science fiction or whatever, where it's protecting but at the same time preserving. And so it's what's old is new, right? It's like it again, like kind of almost like a mini wheel when you think about it, because once it's rediscovered and reopened up, and all of those ter'angreal are being carted back to Tar Valon, and there's like the discovery of them and like Avienda's talent of being able to, kind of determine what's happening, what these old ancient things are being used for. It's like it's in preparation of what's yet to come. It's like nothing is like it's not meant to like memorialize anything. It's in preparation of. There's no, at the end of the day, nothing has to do with being in the past. It's all about what's going to happen in the future.
I like that you tied the preservation side of it with it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, because how are they going to have any kind of understanding of, other than like, it's almost like a physical manifestation of where where Lucerne came from. If we're talking about how they wanted to make a city that was very reminiscent of the Age of Legends, and we're talking about the hubris, and we can do the parallelisms of the tribes of Israel and their hubris and their everything. But when you think about it, like, the only person in the world who could communicate what that time was like, who could actually remember that time, was Randall Thor. This is like a living modern day museum, a testament of what could happen. So it's almost like ground plans to be laid for fourth age development, fourth age construction, fourth age technology that can be brought forward. It's like a blueprint almost for the fourth age.
Like, even when you think preservation of materials that are there, preservation of the ter'angreal, preservation of the tree, how do you, I don't know, I can't remember how long lived Avendesora is, but could it have persisted there for 3,000 years? Or, if it's a tenth, right? Let's say it's a tenth of time, is passing there, is passing outside of it, that ends up being a couple hundred years versus, like, how long would it have taken to go from 18 feet to 100 feet? Over 3,000 years, wouldn't that tree, if it still was alive, wouldn't it have been like 500 feet? In other words, like,
right.
What is...
Not if it had a natural height.
You're right, if it did. But what I'm saying is, like, we don't know what
I've got trees that tall on my property, but they are not 3,000 years old, not anymore in Australia. But they're, different species do have a natural height. And I mean, I know the Chora was a construct, but it wouldn't necessarily just keep growing.
Yeah, if it was built
forever
into that construct, that it had kind of some, like you said, built-in, height. But this is an answer Robert Jordan gave. Which one was this to? This is on...
All I saw was long enough to be almost dead.
This is 2008 Crossroads of Twilight book tour. And I think this is a verbatim. Yeah, probably is a verbatim one. Oh no, this one looked like it was paraphrased. Well, it might be a verbatim. My friend Josh and I have been talking about how Rand and Matt spent a week in Rhuidean, and so he asked how long Matt was hanging. Long enough. Long enough for what? Long enough to be almost dead. Emphasis mine, I was pretty sure this is where Matt died and lived again, but I guess that's out of the question now. So
this gives me Monty Python vibes.
Yep.
It's like, bring out your dead.
Bring out your dead.
No, that's a classic Jordan. Like, he was so good at that.
It will be soon.
He was so good at that. Like, he didn't give away anything, and it's a great answer. But this goes back to it, which is like, how long could Matt have been there? Rand catches up to Murden, doesn't he? Like, he basically passes him.
Right by.
So like the delay of how
him,
long how your progress isn't necessarily at the same speed as someone else's. But Matt went in and out, like we saw in Tyr. Matt went in and out that same morning, right, or whatever it was. So this idea that Matt went in and somehow was in there for 7 days or hanging for 7 days just doesn't make any sense. So it seems clear from a number of these pieces that there was. And so you go back to that quote that we were talking about from the Big White Book, again, with the caveat about the Big White Book. They said, eventually the last of the Jenn Aiel and the Aes Sedai died, but not before the Aes Sedai placed machinery of power to protect Rhuidean from outsiders and preserve it for the Aiel. Like, the protective mechanisms, right, had, I think, a lot to do with that fog. You had to get through it first. And then preserving, right? Preserving it. And this goes to your point, Beth, like the they use the one power to preserve Rhuidean for the Aiel for as long as possible. And how do you preserve it for as long as possible? You make it difficult to get in and to stay, and you, in this case, it seems like create some space, some mechanism that is making time pass within this dome, right? Because he's specific about it being a dome. It's like enclosed, right?
Yeah.
And so things
And you do a
within
time
the dome.
warp.
And yeah, exactly. And
Again.
Alex pointed this out too at the beginning, was there's lots of dust, but apparently there's fog.
Yep.
And so it was like, okay, but if
And
fog,
but
wouldn't
there's
there
no
be
wind, which is important. No wind, no
yeah.
rain, no sun.
exactly like so
And
so like,
fog is water.
They made
But
a
so
big,
is-
huge
is
stasis
fog-
box.
is that fog
what
water,
they did, you
right?
guys. It's a big, huge stasis box.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's actually there's something that I pulled up because it's actually pretty important to all this as well. They did make a kind of actually a little bit of
God, you're such a nerd, Shoddy, pulling things up.
Well, it's kind of a writing technique, right? In the sense of like you say one thing and then when you do the other, and it's supposed to kind of whatever you said before is what's supposed to be referenced, right? And this is after he had his fight with Asmodean. And it's the earth had stopped moving. The glass columns stood still. He was grateful for that. Destroying them would have been like obliterating the history of the Aiel. But Avendasora, that had lived 3,000 years in legend and truth, Avendasora blazed like a torch. And as for the rest of Rhuidean, and an ellipsis, the plaza looked like everything had been picked up and flung about as by a mad giant. Half the great palaces and towers were only heaps of rubble, some spilling into the square. Huge toppled columns marred others, and fallen walls, empty gaps where huge windows of colored glass had been. A rift ran the whole way across the city, and a split in the earth 50 feet wide. Destruction did not end there. The dome of fog that had hidden Rhuidean for so many centuries was dissipating. The underside no longer glowed, and harsh sunlight poured through great new gaps.
The underside no longer glowed. That one's good. And I had never directly...
And the sunlight came in.
I can't remember directly connecting the tree to it, but are you feeling that, Shoddy? Do you feel like
so
the
my
tree was...
thing is like what is the and this is like something that I always like love going back to is the construct that they built in Age of Legends.
Yeah.
The Chora trees are GMO trees, which means that like you can do a lot of things. They are mRNA trees. And so what they did, what it sounds like to me is that, and this is spoiler for something that's later on in the book. So I want to say this right now.
Do I need to throw a spoiler thing?
Just for 30 seconds or so.
Warning, baby.
And it's because it kind of pulls together a little bit like a dream. They made essentially Avendasora into a dream spike, like a weird little dream spike. And and because what is something that they always say about like being on the tree of life? It's like you can sit under it and feel like you can sit there for 100 years and not even realize it.
Yep.
They essentially expanded the feeling of what Chora gives you across that entire city and created a little dream spike and little like, and just like that, they were in there for less than a day, but the outside world, it was like 7 days. And that's what they did. Like they did whatever it is they did, and we're never going to know it. We're never going to find it. It may not even be in the notes. And he just was like, yeah, this is actually kind of a cool concept.
I like because it talks about it does talk about Chora trees, and they actually could affect your emotional state. Yeah. And so I like the idea that they put a dome over it and almost contained the effect. It's like, imagine like it dissipates, like it's just an open,
like a dampening field.
The wind passes and it kind of like, oh yeah, when you have to stand directly under it and you feel it, but it's almost like this dome, and the absence of all these things like created just like whatever effect the Chora tree was creating. This is all speculative, of course, was just like compounded over and over again over time. And it just like basically being in that space had those. I love Noman Gardens. Chora are ASMR GMO. That's right.
And I did find the answer. I did find the answer to how long Moraine came out. It was later the same day. They came out at dawn.
Why did I think it was late? It was days.
It was
later.
like they were almost to.
Because he went in a few days before Rand. I think that's why they were worried, because he'd gone in a few days before
Oh.
Rand, and Rand came out and he still wasn't out.
Mm.
Meridian.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that Murden
Murden,
and
yeah.
his week was basically up before Rand ever came, basically came
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
But Moraine came out, like, it was dusk. Like, they came out at dawn, and for her it was dusk when
Yeah.
Land ran down
Yeah.
to get her.
Yeah.
So
By the
Why
way,
do I
Scott.
always feel like Rip Van Winkle would have fallen asleep under the Abendasora? Like, I get that
I
feeling
mean,
of
that's the story. Yeah.
right.
yeah,
By the way,
Mm.
Scott just pointed out
Go-
also similar to a steading, right? Like,
Yeah.
again, Jordan
Mhm.
kind of reused
Yeah.
some of these concepts of this bubble, and obviously they could channel inside of this one. But the idea of a steading, if you take the steading, you take the Chora, you take a dream spike, you take, and then, from a world's
And-
perspective, you take the skimming space, you take portal stones, you take gateways, you take
Yeah.
all
The Eye
these
of the
things.
World.
And then you take the ter'angreals that you seem to use, and they're able to kind of like program them a little bit differently to use these kind of like constructed worlds, constructed spaces, like.
They're
And I
terrifying.
love that. I love the
They're
Chora being
terrifying.
the Chora being kind of a faux dream spike, if you will, to kind of create this
Mm.
is like an enduring piece. I think I'll take away. And I love the connection between the Chora being burned down
Yeah.
and the fog dissipating. Beyond the fact that it has like it calls out with Kyrie and it calls out like the Aiel and like going
it
out,
really
my
does.
goodness.
like going to Kyrie. Like I love that. It's so interesting, right? Because like basically Rand destroyed this one, whatever. You could say like, yeah, and they, but he ended up leading.
But
the
it wasn't
Aiel,
completely destroyed. But
it wasn't
did
completely-
win.
Yeah.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
It was different, but still kind of an interesting.
And I think that's something
connection.
they actually retconned a little bit between one edition and like the next, is that it looked more destroyed in their first edition, and then they made it a little less destroyed.
Really? Oh my
Later,
gosh! If
yeah.
you can find that, I want to read that.
That'd be funny.
I need to see the text on that. I do want to point this before we move on from this section. This quote from Robert Jordan. This one was verbatim. Jason Denzel at a Comic-Con wrap up in 2004. The question I think Jason was recording this. The question was, somebody asked what his favorite action scene in the series was. Robert Jordan replied that although it wasn't necessarily an action scene, his favorite scene in the series, the one which represents the best of his writing, is where Rand goes into Rhuidean to view the history of the Aiel through the eyes of his
sure.
ancestors. I want to bring that one up because it's just like it's.
Hands down.
There's a reason
My
I
favorite.
think that I can't speak for every fan, but this is it's such a core aspect of the story, such a core piece, just like it's the undercurrent through the whole story of like how this all came to be, right? It started with Lanfear. No, sorry. I'm sorry. I had to bring up Lanfear at some point. That's fine. I had to bring up Lanfear.
Well,
It's fine.
you're
I mean,
not
it did start with
wrong.
her, but whatever. But then there's like the
Devore.
undercurrent of, you have the Aiel and the Jenn Aiel and Rhuidean and Rand. And so I love, and this is full book spoiler still, not that I'm going to go too far down this road, but I love that then Brandon proposed, like that Brandon and what he does with Avienda and Rhuidean. It's a
Yes.
favorite sequence of fans too. Like coming back full circle with that. What
Yeah.
a smart idea.
Yep.
And it does. It hits so well. And it connects. This is one of, I think Brandon said it was like something with Perrin, and this scene is one of his favorites too that Robert Jordan wrote. So just like what a great sequence, just really well done, and it just sticks with all of us. So I love the fact that we're talking about it because it's just like a great part of the books.
I mean, we've done 3 episodes, and we're still not done, because we're gonna extrapolate
yeah.
more from, all the changes the Aiel went through, and you can just keep going. These chapters are so jam packed.
Yeah.
You just can't. You have to read them over and over. There's so much to get out of them.
I do want to bring this up because it was during the podcast I listened to this. Wasn't it you, Zool, who proposed that there were other mechanisms that were like protecting the city, not just like the fog? Wasn't like that they kind of people felt like they were being watched?
No, that was actually Lauren.
Was it
brought that
Lauren?
up.
Oh, okay.
It was
Lauren.
It was
So-
a pet theory of Lauren's.
I'm totally in after reading that line from the White Book, Big White Book, where they placed machinery of power to protect Rhuidean from outsiders and preserve it for the Aiel. I don't think they were beholden necessarily. Like I don't think they were beholden to this idea of like, well, that would be against what we believe. Especially not the Aes Sedai. I think the Aes Sedai were like, you know what? We'll happily create this and stop people from going through. And I love that there is other mechanisms that we don't know about to help protect this. Like not just the fog, right? Like if someone gets past the fog, that there's other things in the city that would protect the city and preserve it for the Aiel. I love that. So yeah, Lauren, props to you. I'm a proponent of the speculation there. Are there other pieces to like Rhuidean itself? Before we jump into the glass columns a bit here, are there other aspects of the city that, you know, when you think of this city and someone's coming in for the first time and learning about it, where you're like, oh, this one, we haven't talked about this and I wanted to bring it up?
I've got a question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the scene we got of Rand and the others standing looking down into Rhuidean in the teaser trailer? Do you feel that gives the feeling that we get when reading of this huge city? Because it's not quite a dome fog. Well, it kind of is, because even from inside Rhuidean, some of the buildings go out of it. But
They
yeah,
poke
what
out
are
of
your
it, yeah.
thoughts on that?
Well, good question. I still have the video open from the
course you
last
do.
time I showed Ruark. So yeah, let's look at that image. Yeah, I mean, now that we've kind of described the city, yeah, I feel like it does, when you look left and right, I feel like it captures, right? So like we just talked about, it's somewhere between 2 and 3 miles to go from one side, if you will, to the other. And then you look at the mountain range in the back that still seems to be kind of covered with this fog. So yeah, I definitely think it captures the immensity and of the distance, right, as compared to them walking down to like a city wall there. It seems like
The wall is weird to me.
Yeah, it seems like they created a wall to kind of like really emphasize like a border. So yeah, outside of the wall, from a size perspective, the immensity, it's like I need to see somebody actually in the city. So make that happen, Amazon. You know, as soon as possible. Let's get here. But yeah, if these buildings are, you know, in some cases 50, 100 feet tall, you know, even taller, then,
300.
yeah, 300 feet tall. Yeah, then, and seems like they've done, like they've tried to capture the palace look in some of these. You can kind of see some domed looking kinds of constructs.
And some very squarish, flat-sided.
And I really do like I imagine, like in the books it's described that everything is like fogged over, right? You can't really see the city. And when you're in the city, everything hits like as if it's, you know, into the actual fog itself, like sticking into the fog. I feel most of it would hit out. But I kind of like this scene specifically because it kind of just looks like it's skyscrapers.
Yep.
And that just is very different. And we've already seen in this show like a skyscraper moments, even just from the first episode, right? And just showing how different those moments are now to the present time of the show itself. That like Age of Legends was very skyscraper. It's very big city. It's urban. It may have like those sci-fi curves to them, but this matches to what the show itself has already told us, and that will tell us that like, oh, this is supposed to match up to that.
Yeah. What if they designed what if in Rhuidean the buildings are actually just like hangars for like for the Jokars and stuff? Like it's like there's like ships. There's like ships, just like there's just huge hangars, and they just never knew. And then like they go destroy the city.
It's just
and
an
I was
airport.
like so bummed because they destroyed. Did anyone else feel that when you're reading the books? Were you bummed like when like they were having the battle and like half? I don't know why I was bummed as a reader.
Really
I was
empty.
like, don't destroy the city that no one gets to enjoy ever. Like, but
I was way
like,
bummed that they destroyed it.
But from a continuity standpoint, from a show to keep things simple, wouldn't it make sense for them to show Rhuidean as the last standing city from the Age of Legends? I mean, I don't necessarily want them to do it, but it's a protected city that was built and survived the breaking. I almost wonder.
You're saying change like
change it from being built after by the Jenn Aiel to.
I mean, that would simplify it for
it would
sure.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, would it just
would
be
it though?
It would. It would, because we saw the ruins from the Age of Legends in the first season. So if we saw the like what it looked like an intact city that survived because of the Aes Sedai trying to protect it. I'm just saying, like, it would make things easier to understand for a non-book reader. If it was a city that survived the Age of Legends instead of
a city that the Aiel in their wagons somehow found.
We don't know that they're necessarily going to go that route.
They are going to be in wagons.
It doesn't surprise me that the show has taken the route. I don't want to go too far down the show route, but like, it doesn't surprise me that to get a visual that they've changed the visual a little bit because they do this because it's like but we want them to see that there's something there. So
you have to see.
We're gonna make it not as domey. You know, we're gonna take away the dome aspect or at least some of it and see that there's something there. But I wouldn't be surprised, Beth, if they do something like you just described. But yeah, I think they've captured kind of the immensity. I would have liked it. I think as I look at this picture, liked it to have gone on a little bit. If I was being critical, a little bit larger. But again, it scales so hard to tell from where we're at right here.
I mean, this could be just a screenshot of a huge pan, right? Like this could just be like
how far are they from the wall there? And when somebody's standing next to the wall, like how big is that? But there is a little bit of that wall does kind of bring back a little Shatter Logoth the way that they created it in the show.
It does.
Kind of like
it does.
The light, the dark, if you will. Shatter Logoth if Shatter Logoth if Mordeth hadn't messed with it.
Because in the show we really got that perspective of how tall that wall around Shadow Logoth was.
Yeah.
So, if they're calling back to that, it helps try to make sense of the perspective.
Well, you can see the gateway into the city. If you look back at that picture, you can see it down in the far bottom right-hand corner. That looks immense if that's a gateway into
or
the
it might
city.
be in the middle. Yeah.
Before my last comment on this city, the show side will be that they have their work cut out for them because this is again Robert Jordan's, what he considers his best work there. It's universally something that fans call back to. It's such an important aspect of the Aiel and Rand story, and it's such an iconic. Like just reading those lines again of them walking down. Like, this is what all I gotta say is if there's a tavern or an inn, or if there's a small something in that city, they've made a mistake.
Correct.
Like just
and there doesn't appear to be, does it?
Yeah,
From
no,
what
no,
we
it
can
doesn't.
see up here.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I'm just saying, like that would be like that would have been a mistake. Now, I'm gonna say let's probably take this another 20 minutes or so. Try not to keep everyone more than about 2 hours on their Wednesday nights. But I don't want to end this conversation about Rhuidean without touching on the columns. Now, you crazy people have apparently done 3 podcasts and at least two tackling the ancestral visions, if not more. So is there something could you consolidate all your discussions down to 15 minutes for all of us? No. So but no, what is it that's maybe I may go to each one of you and ask you about the visions themselves, something that in your study this time through really touched you, affected you as a reader, or something that you just acknowledged that you just hadn't noticed before in Robert Jordan's like doing this. Yeah, and if you're like, I'm gonna do 2 or I'm gonna do 1 and I'll come back to me for the second one, I think that's fine. There's just no good way for us to like dig into them. I think they're each like you're doing. They're each require kind of like it would require its own show just to talk those ancestral visions. So does one of you immediately have something come to mind? We want to start with you. Okay, Koala, yeah, go for it.
I've got one. So we did it backwards. So I'm back at the drilling of the bore with Chan. And what really hit me was that Rand, it's not like Rand's watching something happening, he's experiencing it. And so if he's experiencing it, he knows, from that person what's going on. And the entire university was leveled. And that struck me for the first time that's why Rand wanted to build a university, because he witnessed right back at the drilling of the bore, boom, the university was gone, and that stuck with him.
Oh, interesting. That's a really cool like recognition that he might have carried that Jordan was purposely kind of connecting those events and again, that kind of recreating something and taking from like, oh, this looks like we need this again. Bring this back. So yeah, that's a fantastic one. I love that one. Someone else.
Something for me that I really spent a little bit more time with, and I have a really tough time with names. And I like the fact that we did this in a certain order. We did it in chronological order. So we started with the last POV back to the first POV in the 2 chapters. And so I took time to, see like how many generations it was and who was in what POVs, and kind of get an idea of the span of time, because I never really had a very good feel for it. And so for me, that was pretty important to see how quickly things changed, and how comments from one generation or, maybe somebody's grandchildren's generation would be like, we don't even believe what they told us from, the stories from my great father tells me, that there was actually snow. What are you talking about? What is this? All kinds of different things. Like each generation had their things like that, which is a very Wheel of Time concept. It's very, the stories changed, they become memories, become legend, become, myth and all of that. So that's very much that same thing. And I really wanted to get a feel for really tracing it all the way back down and seeing how did they get inside out from where they started to where they ended.
Yeah.
And then how were the Jenn and the Tuatha in their own ways so much alike yet so different, and how did they all start at the same point and end up in 3 completely different places, with the Tuatha, the Aiel, and the Jenn Aiel? Like, just the way that all branches out and all of the connective tissue. And I love to see the continuity the whole way through of the changing of the land and just all of it through. To me, all of the connectivity of it is what makes it so beautiful and masterful. So that was it for me.
Yeah, there's something really about the whole. It's like if you painted or tried to go back and tell like one single moment in your life, and then told one single moment from your parents' life, and then told one single moment from their parents' lives, and then but like found a thread, because you can find those, right? Just from familial, from just generations. You can almost find sometimes a thread of some experience where you're like, that's kind of a shared experience. We had different reactions to that shared experience, but it was that shared experience. And what did that different reaction do? Like, how did we take that? And so I think Jordan does a great job. We're like, you almost can kind of feel like you're in that point of view, but then you're like, wait a second, now they're the ones that are like saying, well, no, you have to, they're telling their kids, or they're saying you have to do it this way. And somebody makes the choice, and whatever their context of their choice or why they made it, it had repercussions. And then those repercussions touched on future generations. It's like so well crafted, and it's so interesting, right? To kind of take it all the way back. But then, like you're saying, almost come forward in that storytelling is almost a different experience, I'm sure, like you just described.
Very much so, yeah.
Because we read it one way, right? We don't go the other way typically and read it back. So before I move on from you, Azul, and maybe I'll put the book spoiler up. This is full book spoilers for people that are still watching. Watch the screen, maybe mute us, and come back. I just had this question later than Fires of Heaven. Do you think that Brandon? We don't have to go into the details, but do you think he did a good job of kind of creating that same effect in when Aviendha goes back through?
I'm going to pass this off to someone else because I haven't read that recently enough. I was just saying in our podcast that I need to reread Aviendha's experience. So I'd like to pass that to someone else.
Go Bev.
Go Beth.
Yeah.
One of my favorite theories is directly tied to Aviendha's trip through into the future. And I think I think he did a really good job, really, when you look at the parallelisms, because when Aviendha goes in, it starts in the far future when her last surviving descendant is killed by Shanchan with a shock lance, basically a glow stick or whatever they called it, because they were building the railroad tracks out into the Aiel Waste, and she was with other people, and then she was scavenging in the garbage for food scraps. And each generation that gets closer and closer and closer to the first generation after the last battle, they lost more and more of themselves. And so it does. I think Brandon Sanderson did a really good job of the parallelisms of the further they got from the end of the Third Age into the Fourth Age, the more of who the essence and the heart of the Aiel were, because in each of those things, it's like, Aviendha's great granddaughter was a wise one. And then like they had no idea really what Giotto was. Like the gradual decline of, when we did the podcast, I kind of like use this thing as like a big, huge multi-generational game of telephone where, you hear one thing and the Aes Sedai were desperate to get the Aiel out of the city. And so like they kind of almost in an afterthought were like, yeah, take this stuff and go. Yeah. And the Aiel took it as like a sacrament, as a pledge. Right. And that turned into their entire existence, right? And so for thousands of years, the Aiel think that they've broken this promise to the Aes Sedai. And their entire culture was shaped on that. And so the passing of time, and I think that's the thing for me that resonates the most is those, and we don't really see it in the glass columns, but that has to be there. There has to be moments of happiness in all of that, because we only ever see those moments of change. And a lot of times that's brought because of negative things, right? Like when we see the first Maiden of the Spear, her daughter had just been kidnapped and she wanted to get her daughter back. And when the original Aiel separate from the Jenn Aiel, right? Because they went and rescued their sisters and killed somebody. But there have to be moments of happiness in that. We don't really ever see that, but we see generations of people who are partnering and having children and raising children and trying to continue this to continue on in the world and live lives. These are real people. Well, not real people, but you know what I mean? They're people who were living their lives. They weren't always in fear. They found people, they fell in love, they had children, they had friendship, they had kinship, they had bonds. And that's the one thing, right? It's like the human condition. That's my big thing about this podcast, is talking about the thing that makes the Wheel of Time so tenable to me and sticking with me since 1991 was the fact that at the end of the day, it's a story about humanity and what we do wrong and what we do right. And we're all fallible and we all make mistakes. And that's what makes it so relatable to me.
But we can agree, right, that over 3,000 years, the Aes Sedai kind of suck, you know.
Kind of, yeah, absolutely.
I'm just saying, like, they were really like severe.
Kinda.
Like they were so
Absolutely.
like I mean I don't want to get that we did a whole thing on the Aes Sedai. Go watch that one. That was a fun live stream. But no, the reason why I'm bringing this up because what you were saying was like really it was affecting me because I was like, oh my gosh, to think how severe they were, and who did they serve? The Aes Sedai, and who created the craziest like testing for becoming an Aes Sedai? The Aes Sedai, like
Right.
like the thing, like when you actually find out what they have to do to earn, you know, like I think about the organization and it's probably that reaction, right? The reaction to the breaking, the reaction to the end of the Age of Legends, the reaction to those things. It was like the severity of the response of like, no, like we're basically, things were great. And then they were really, really terrible. And I was like, how do we get it back? And so, yeah, like you said, I'm sure there were great times. Robert Jordan didn't necessarily talk through those.
No, but there had to be, right?
Yeah.
There had to be because you see the perseverance, right? I mean, but you see the perseverance of humanity, and so I think for me, the thing that sticks the most in this is all the stuff that we don't see that has to be happening. I think that's
that's good.
Yeah.
More shady.
So, I have not been on the last two podcasts about.
How dare you?
How dare I? So it's not something that I have reread recently, but it is something that I have read over and over and over and over. And each time that I have read these stories, it's something that's always sticks with me is the fact that the Aiel are basically, they are the way of the leaf, both in terms of a concept of philosophy, as well as they themselves are spreading seeds for the pattern. They are themselves like Johnny Appleseed. They themselves are like a pine cone that just are like little, like those little dandelions, because when they were sent out, now we see this through the glass columns, right? Each moment of time that Rand sees a person in his through their eyes. Now, personally, I have a pet theory that each person that he himself sees, besides the one that everyone else sees, his own ancestral moments, each one of these people are actually, at least at some point, a minor Taveran, but that's a whole different thing. Anyway, they are all fools of the pattern that are pushed to do things. Now, they were all given these ter'angreals. They were all given things and told, keep going till you find a place of safety, because there was someone who had a foretelling, and they could not see far enough to see what the end was. But you know what? They kept losing things along the way. They kept losing wagons. And what ended up happening? There were certain ter'angreal and certain things at certain locations that were necessary through the books. And how much you want to bet it was because they lost a wagon there, and they lost a wagon there, and it was because they got stolen there. And how much you want to bet Sora's ter'angreal was stolen by that Aes Sedai during that one moment, and it was taken off. That's why Egwene had it at the end. And like it's like they were essentially traveling the world, popping little apple seeds everywhere, just dropping their seeds everywhere. They were literally the way of the leaf. They were a tree just going everywhere. Like, you know, like the biggest one that that's like, it's because it's so obvious, right? Is the sharing of water, right? They dug the wells for the Carrion, and they came back and gave them. Those wells were Dumai's wells, and what like the most peaceful moment for them in their history was also the most bloodiest moment in the books. Like it comes full circle, but like you look at all the other moments, like just the little things, like they just, because they traveled, because they are the connection between the beginning and the end, all their little actions, all their little the pattern pushed them to where they need to be, led to the Dragon Reborn needing what he needed at the time he needed it, and for everyone else around him to need it. That the Redstone doorway in Tyr needed to be there so that way he could get whatever he needed in that doorway to get to the end of the books. And Matt needed what he needed, and Maureen got what she needed, and like it just all of it. It's amazing to me in just these 2 chapters that he goes through. You sit there and go, and if you pick it all apart, you go, like that right there. That probably is the reason why those domination bands are over there. Like, who knows, right? I really wish I could just sit down one day and just find that one note that says like, yeah, that it was in that wagon, right? Yeah. But like, it fascinates me just the cause and effect that just having the Aiel traveling with those wagons had on the world.
Yeah.
And that they are truly, they themselves are the covenant of the way of belief in the metaphorical, the physical, and the spiritual sense.
Yeah. Let's not even say anything else. I think that was a great way to end. Okay, everybody, see you later. No, that was No, that was really good. I was like watching people in comments and chat, and yeah.
Don't forget to give away a mug. I'm not in chat to say it to you, so I'm saying it now.
No, it's good. Is Innkeeper on us is still in chat, because it'd be a great time to start a mug giveaway or a card giveaway. That would be, I guess I can figure it out while I'm here. No, I love that. Again, it goes back to Robert Jordan, and for him that was like some of his best writing, right? And
Absolutely.
But not just because it's like, oh, this is great writing per se. It's like, this is, like you just said, Morshade, you're like, this is the thread from the Age of Legends, right, up through the end of, right? This was how the wheel was going to weave, like, the end of the next age was with a thread from the previous age. And that thread really was like almost like a figurative thread that was like making its way across the world. This is great. It's a great, I've never
it literally is. And it literally is Rand's the descendants from the first, Charn or whoever that is, all the way to Rand, and the things that had to happen along the way in order to get the Dragon Reborn. So we had the problem of the boar, and we had the solution of Rand, and you had to have the sharing of the water, and then the giving of Ivandoral Dara, and Layman cutting it down, and in order to have the prophecies, to have his mom go over the dragon wall and be a maiden, and him being bored, and then coming back to Rhuidean and being the one to see it all and be lead the Aiel back, So it's all of those connected things that make it just so beautiful to me.
As they say, it's the objects of power you met along the way. Yes.
Or you lost
love
along
that.
the way.
By the way, it is an exclamation point raffle. If you've put in something that's not exclamation point raffle into chat, make sure you do. And that's
You might get balefuled.
Yeah, if you put $ or whatever number sign, or put an I, as I'm seeing some people in chat that did it that way. Put an exclamation point raffle as one word, and you can be part of the swag giveaway. Thank you, Innkeeper, out there for kicking that up. No, fantastic conversation, and the way this ended, it even just reminds me more that season 3 of the show, again, from what we can see in the teaser trailer, there are moments that make me hope that they've really taken this to heart. You know what I mean? Like, like just like a shot like this. You have like this shot, right?
Yeah.
like, okay. I'm trying to think of what else. Another one when like that one not so much.
How about walking and dragging the feet?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
right
the
there.
dragging of the feet is just
Um,
iconic. Yeah.
So the dusty, like you were
That.
talking about, and the
Yeah.
glass columns, and just
The-
struggling through it.
The blue
Yeah.
is such an iconic kind
The
of
blue,
like connection
yeah.
to the
Yeah.
you know to the
Well, like
story there.
There's also the shot right there of Shaila, right, where in the snow. Like,
yeah.
Jandwin
Yep.
finding
Where-
her.
With
Yeah.
Janduin
Yeah.
finding her. Yep.
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah, it's a
and,
bit
and
further
the
along.
and the
Tree.
assumption
And
the
that
assumption
feeling
there,
of a Vendosora.
yeah,
Yeah, and that feels a good size because, like I said, I've got trees here, quite close to the house that are the size of a Vendosora, and I look at that one in the teaser trailer, and it's like, yeah, that feels right.
Yeah. That's even just that look on his face right here.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's just his
Yeah.
eyes kind of like
like trying
yeah,
to figure
you can
out what
see
the hell's
him
going on.
processing
Yeah.
what he's just experienced. Yeah,
And he's actually feeling those feelings. There's a one where he's
he's
looking up and
experiencing
screaming.
it. Yes,
That one,
Mhm.
looking and screaming. That, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
like
I love that one. That's one of my favorite shots out of the teaser trailer. Is just
yeah.
that scream.
There we
from
go, right there.
Rand.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
And the
oh,
way it
man.
nicely flips between Jandwin screaming and him screaming. Yeah.
I know whatever they do here with these shots here, it's got to be like, it will not surprise me, right? If this is like the favorite, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's the favorite in the books,
Mhm.
and this just like
Mhm.
Yosha just looks like he's just living it right here, and
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
shot is
Yeah.
so good, man. So
Well, and I think it just makes
It
it so much
is.
better. It just makes it so good that we know that Yosha just devoured these books. Like, just
Yeah.
became a
Yeah.
fan of the source material. Is not just an actor, but has an affinity and an affection for the source material. I think it just going to make it even more powerful to
And
see
we
on the
know
screen.
that they've allowed the actors to bring a lot of themselves
Mhm.
and their own knowledge that they've gained of the books into the scenes that they've been doing, and that really feels great when you see that face on him. Yeah.
I just had this thought, and now I realized I never did this during the breakdown. That's not the same mountain range that they see, is it? When they're looking down on Rhuidean. Now I want to know. Now I'm gonna have
We're gonna
was
have,
a little
yeah, we're gonna
confused
have
by
to
that
break it
shot.
up. I think so.
I was a little confused
I
by
think
that shot,
so.
by like how long
so
that
this-
distance is. Like if
this mountain
maybe
right
there's
here.
just a
See this
That
this
does
mountain right
look
here.
the
You have
same.
kind of like you have that formation. Let's go back
Yeah.
to the end.
And 2 peaks before it really troughs and gives a. And of course, we're at
No.
a different
Maybe,
angle.
oh yeah,
on
it's right here. Yeah, it's a different angle.
Yeah,
It could
I
be this
think
right
so.
here, and
I
there's that
think,
because there's like
yes,
a
I
little
think-
ridge. So
Just behind his shoulder is really where, in that first shot, it's starting over on the left. So we're looking at it from a different angle.
well, it's like
And
when he
and is that
leaves, but you're
fog
not.
that we can see behind him in front of the mountains? Yeah, there where your mouse is.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting
Yeah.
question. It's like
It is
yeah.
too. So
I was
that
wondering about
gives
that because
us,
it's such a long distance that he's walked
yeah,
from.
and it gives us
from
that
the city.
perspective of
Yeah.
when they're standing on the top of that ridge line and they're looking down at Rhuidean.
Yeah.
You know, they are not as close as they appear. That has changed the perspective,
hold on.
and we see that now in that walk.
Hold on, my frickin' fellow innkeeper already ended the. Yeah, he's like,
Ended the
We've
raffle.
got winners! Hooray!
he's like, hey, you had me do this. I have to go to bed. So raffle's over. Congratulations, Penny.
Yay, Penny!
That is freaking hilarious. That's so good. Oh my gosh.
night,
Yes.
Honest.
Congratulations. Yes. And good night.
Good night, Honest.
And thank you.
Night,
Congratulations,
Honest.
Penny. You know how to find me, Penny. And yeah, what an interesting, and can't wait to see that 2 months away at this point. So
I know.
Innkeeper's like, I'm like, he's comparing mountains. Exactly.
Yeah.
Did I say that? My frickin' fellow Innkeeper. That's yeah. I think that's a hashtag. Frickin' fellow Innkeeper. Morshadi, thank you for coming. Nice to have you here at the Dusty Wheel. I hope you enjoyed this experience. And you three, that's fine that you were here. No, I'm just kidding. You're awesome, and
just fill a chair.
I love having you here. So no, this is a lot of fun. I always know there's not like an hour and a half, 2 hours is never enough to kind of talk through these topics, as you well know. So if one of my mods doesn't mind putting a link to the podcast in chat, maybe you've already done it, please, if you have a moment, and you can do that again, that'd be amazing. And I believe it's in the description.
It is in the description.
Okay.
I saw it.
So if you were like, this was a lot of fun, I enjoyed listening to a conversation about Rhuidean, and that's what you want to say it, like Rhuidean. That's totally fine to this group
Rhuidean.
of people. They're with you in that. And but please do check out the podcast. When is the next release that you have coming? I know you said it's bi-weekly. When is the next?
This coming Monday.
Okay. This coming Monday. And is it the second of the 3 you're doing, or
Yes.
is it the?
Oh no. Yeah.
Oh, really? No, it shouldn't.
No, it's going to be
no.
Well, because we did the Mama Poe episode dropped last time, right?
I don't think we've dropped any of the glass column episodes yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
It's gonna be the
do
first
try to
one of that
record a little
two-parter.
bit ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be the first one of that two-parter
Okay.
where we start
Okay,
from
yeah,
the
so yeah.
before and work our way
Right.
through.
That sounds.
But it is
Yeah.
the third about
26.
Rhuidean. It's like the third because you did the one with
So
It's
Malone.
it'll be the second about Rhuidean,
Yeah.
and then
That's
there'll
what,
be another one.
and
to
that's
come
what I
again.
meant. And that's what I meant. It was like the follow-up of that.
Oh,
Second about Rhuidean, first about tackling the ancestral visions.
Last column.
Obviously, if there's something that we
Yes.
missed, feel free to leave it in the comments. If you think that we got something wrong, like you wanted to point out that Beth said shock lance and it was really a gun, that's fine. There's that's fine. That's fine. You can.
It was a gun. You're right. You're
The
right.
by the way, I didn't remember that. It was somebody in chat. This
By
stuff
the
happens
way,
to me
and
all the
we-
time.
And
This
Matt, we
happens-
still have to talk about the theory I told you about before the show started.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a whole other show.
It is a whole
Yeah.
other show. But
Yes, I was going to say, do I need to? Do you want to remind people? Like, I'll put up book spoilers. Okay, full book spoilers. If you're still here, you're in the full book spoiler family, and I'm trying to give some space so you can turn this off. You're like across the room, and you're like, no, don't ruin the books for me. And so, like by this point, you should have reached it, or you should have run out of the room. And go, Beth. What is the
Buckle up.
theory?
Okay.
What's the full book spoiler theory you want to share
So
before
the
we end?
full book spoiler theory is when Avienda went back through the glass columns and
Oh
she
yeah, this is like major full book.
major full book
This
spoilers.
is, oh yeah, hold on.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
like
As
full
spoiler
book
as you
plus
get.
10
Plus
year
10
secret.
years.
Yes.
If you've never heard the 10 year
Yes.
secret, this is going to spoil that. So you should stop listening because that's such a no. So no, you tell me. We're gonna do this theory later. We'll do this theory
It's a bit
later.
different.
So
We'll do this
I
theory
won't-
later.
We'll do this theory later. Yeah,
We'll do
we'll
it
stop
later.
there. We'll stop there.
Yeah.
Wait for it,
Good.
folks.
You remember that first conversation I had about the author can be wrong?
Do I need to have a conversation with Morshadi about the 10-year thing? Is that what's happening?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh gosh. There's there's just stuff.
So
There's stuff that like I'll leave my family and be like, once I'm dead, then you can share these other stories. After decades, you're left with just like, I can never tell
Yeah.
anybody that. That's really cool. But I'm glad that one was able to. Whatever you feel about it, it felt so good for me, at least, to be done with holding on to it. That's what
I
felt good.
bet.
I went back and watched that recently, and I hadn't ever just watched everyone's comments. That is the funniest comment
Oh, that
thread.
would have been so much fun.
Oh my gosh, it's such a great comment thread because people are just like, look at Matt smiling. He's so happy. This is his Matt's living his best life. Matt will never live past this. Like this is like, and they're just like, this must be better than when his wife gave birth to his children. Like he's so happy. Whatever, They're just like, it's the funniest thing. So yes, just go look up Brandon Sanderson 10-Year Secret and go watch it. It's worth 30 minutes of your life, I think. So with that being said, thank you all for being here. Next week we are doing a deep dive into Rand and hearing voices in his head. We'll stop there for anyone that doesn't want to hear the end of that or know more. But if you do, please join us. It's going to be similar to what we did with Nakomi theories and pipe theories. We're going to kind of like cover major theories from the last 30 years about what that was and what the proofs are or not. We're not going to be going into like so much. I mean, we have like 2 hours, so it's not going to be like crazy detailed. But if you had some comments or you want to be part of that and you weren't around for those conversations, or maybe you were, you can't remember, or like me, you're like, I can't remember all of them. I need to go back and study them for the next week to remind myself what they were. But it's going to be a fun one. We haven't tackled that one. And that is something that I still think confuses fans. I still think there's some pieces of that are still a little bit, controversial about what is the final answer. Like what was that? And so yeah. Join us next Wednesday. It'll be a fun one, a la the pipe and Nakomi. So, with that being said, go follow these wonderful people, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Looking at you, Amazon Prime. That you promised to drop something. So, we're assuming you're going to make good on that. So yeah, see you next Wednesday, everybody. As it's shown here, good night from the Dusty Wheel, and Smash to Black.
Welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
You went right to kill it. Look at you. You're already. You're just done. I mean, this is like this is one
really
of the
well.
biggest scenes.
And now I'm like, great, my turn.
And if you don't like that, you want to say, well, Robert Jordan could have made the two rivers all white. He could have, but he didn't. So,
Just complimented me on my dress, and as you can clearly see, I'm not wearing one.
I see Nakomi as something along the lines of a Shadow Haran analog.
It does make sense why it outlasted the breaking.
Yeah.
See, this is why I have Therese in the show, because she's going to correct everything that.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dusty Wheel Show. What? Meme Off Challenge. Yay!
Like baby face mounted on like a huge body. So like all of a sudden,
this is not just
like,
a traditional fantasy, right? There are sci-fi
and
elements.
Just a moment ago, Rafe tweeted something. So let me get my guests in here with me, and
probably I would say put in 70-80% of the work. I got to be over the shoulder and be like, no.